Well, a lot is going to unfold in a very short time, so let's take a closer look into what is next for Latin America's largest economy. I'm joined by Gustavo Ribeiro, founder and editor-in-chief of the Brazilian Report. Gustavo, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
A very exciting time. You see all those Lula supporters drunk with happiness out on the streets. Let's talk about the key to Lula's victory, because in the initial race, 3 weeks ago, he did much worse than many people had anticipated, and a lot of people were really worried that Bolsonaro was going to build on that on the race over the weekend. Your thoughts?
I wouldn't say that Lula fared much worse than anticipated, because he got 48% of the vote, so he was very close to an outright first-round landslide. The thing is that Bolsonaro was much stronger than everyone in every poll anticipated. The major pollsters had Bolsonaro with 36, 37%, and he ended up with over 43%, so that was a shocker, essentially because most voters in Brazil behaved in the first round like it were a runoff. So even though we had 11 candidates, voters behave, more than 91% of voters behave as if we had just two of them. And essentially, so this runoff was a sort of third round, as we would say in Brazil. Lula won because, one, he still is extremely popular because Brazilians associate him with a moment of prosperity. He was the president during the commodities boom, and median wealth in Brazil rose by 6 times during his time in office. Anti-incumbency is also very strong in Latin America in this past couple of years because of the successive crises we are facing. Before Sunday, we had 14 free and fair elections in which pro-government or incumbents lost.
Right.
So this is a major factor. And Lula got a broad coalition behind him as well.
Indeed. Gustavo, what do we know about Lula's economic style? You mentioned that he was in charge during some very prosperous times. I remember back in the early part of the teens, 2013, 2014, it was estimated that Brazil was going to be the 5th largest economy in the world. What do we know about Lula? Where is he going to take this country?
So there are people who call Lula, he's like a Bible. You read him and you take what you want. And that's because he tells different audiences what they want to listen to. So he is as at ease talking to bankers as talking to low-income voters. And to avoid being attacked by specific proposals, he offered just broad guidelines that he would want, and 3 days before the election, he said he would ally fiscal and social responsibility, saying that he would take care of the poor while not obliterating fiscal controls, which will be a tough balance. But he has been very stingy in regards to specific proposals. He has said that I know how to do things, I have done them in the past, although 20 years after his first election, he's taken the country in a much more daunting situation than in 2003.
And he also has his history of problems. How will this term be different from last? And what do you think the new economic challenges are going to be? You talked about them. Just go into depth a little bit more, if you would, please.
Yes, because he took office during the commodities boom, but this time around, the global scenario is not as favorable. He's not going to get those tailwinds as he did. The fiscal situation is very complicated in Brazil because Bolsonaro, in his effort to win re-election, essentially threw everything but the kitchen sink at this campaign. So he raised spending with social programs, and he essentially set time-ticking bombs, fiscal time-ticking bombs, and the tap is coming next year, essentially. So Lula is going to have to use these 2 months of transition to negotiate with Congress how to work out a budget for next year, even though he has no constitutional mandate. I mean, the anticipation of power will help him with that, and he will need a waiver to, like a license to spend next year, otherwise he won't get anything done.
Okay, let's talk about a couple of things that are out there. Bolsonaro has made it clear he was going to fight tooth and nail for weeks and weeks and weeks. He has not conceded. What are the concerns? What are even the dangers if he and his supporters really dig in their heels? And what do you think about the outlook for the Brazil-China connection?
So, to talk about Bolsonaro, a lot of people are reacting positively to the fact that Bolsonaro has not said anything so far, because what most people were expecting was him to challenge the election and try to overthrow the results. So, if that's the alternative, then it's better not to have him talk at all. But it's by no means the sign of a healthy system if the president who has just lost the campaign has not considered and has not commented on the results. In terms of the China connection, Lula has had sometimes a more aggressive rhetoric around China, but his track record shows that he values the partnership and he knows how important China is to Brazil. It is the outright leading trading partner for Brazil. It is the main destination of our exports, especially commodities like soybeans and iron ore. I would expect, and Lula values South-South cooperation. He was one of the, and he takes pride of being one of the founding members of the BRICS. So I think he will invest in those relationships a lot once he takes office.